So good morning. I always like giving grand rounds early in the year. On Tuesdays, I spend my day out at the Davis campus, so that's why you don't see me often here, because that's my role as Vice Chancellor of Human Health Sciences, which I'm still working on what that really means. But I spend time out there talking with the other deans and other vice chancellors. And so on Tuesday, I'm out there, so I don't really get to participate in M&M. It's interesting how many things don't change as you listen to that. Today, I'd just like to talk a little bit about resiliency. So I gave this talk at the American College of Surgeons. It was the Olga Jonassen talk. And Olga Jonassen was the first woman chair of surgery ever at Ohio State. She was there for 5 years, and she subsequently has died, but she was really one of the most important people to me. When I was a medical student at Rush Medical College, she came and gave a talk. She was a transplant surgeon, and she walked in to talk about kidney transplant. This is in 1978. Olga was about 6'4", and I watched her walk in the room, and I thought, whoa, do you have to be that tall to be a surgeon? And she was a force. For those of us that are a little older and knew her, she was a force. But she also was someone that really believed in bringing people along. And now, as we go looking across the country, there are 16 women chair of surgery right now. And you have one of them. And when I was chair of surgery, I was one of 4 ever. So we really see quite a bit of diversity coming into surgery. You can see by your room sitting here. You can see at UC Davis about the diversity we have. But because of that, it can be a struggle as you start your internship year. And it can be interesting as you don't look appropriate for what you are doing in your life. And I just spoke to the first year medical students yesterday too, telling them that it's very important for you to make a difference in where you came from and who you are. We want your diversity, we want your background, but at the same time, you have to be the very best surgeon you can be. And for some of you, that's going to be pretty easy, and some of you are going to struggle a little bit more. And to get competent, to be a really good surgeon, you heard that this morning, is no matter how good you are, you're going to have complications. You know, big surgeons, big problems, right? And then you also are going to have to own up to what you're doing. And you also now, the best thing that's happened to surgery, I think, is the ability to work in teams. When I trained, way back when in the 70s, it was really 1 for 1 and 1 for 1. I mean, it was your fault, and I can't tell you the number of times I was told I personally killed somebody, because I didn't call, I didn't do this, right? So those days are maybe almost over, but teamwork is really the way to go. So here's a great picture. So here's me in college, okay? Don't I look just the same, okay? So, yesterday I was in the clinic seeing a couple patients, and one of the patients actually is a tennis player, and my younger brother is a coach for tennis. He actually is coming to visit today, and this kid had an effort thrombosis and his dad had known all about me. As he looked at me, he goes, "Oh, but you must be younger than your brother," and I'm 7 years older. I'm like, "I love you." That was a great day. And I hate M&M when you say there's older patient is 62. I don't like that, okay? Older is everything older than me. And then this actually is a picture of me as an intern. So I found this going through a box as I moved to do it. So that's me. That's Debbie Klonsky when I was an intern back in 1980. There were 3 women in our class. Debbie was from New York. Barbara was from LA with blonde hair, and that's a 4th-year medical student who was very confused, as you can tell. I'm not sure what ever happened to Len, but we were the first time 2 women were on the vascular surgery service for the summer, and that was the first time they ever had 2 women interns together. And it was 2 of us. We were every other night in house. That's what we did for a living, and it was stressful, very, very stressful, because back in 1980, we had no endovascular bypasses. We didn't even know if anything worked. That was the first time we were using PTFE for bypasses. We hadn't even done an in situ bypass till the late 80s. So most everything we did didn't work. So we were really challenged, and patients stayed. The average length of stay for a patient when I was an intern was 23 days, okay? Because they would come in, and we'd wonder what was wrong, okay? We would get images. CT scans had just started, and I'm not that old, right, to do it. we would wonder, we would examine, we did exploratory laparotomies, which you'll never do, right, to do it, rarely do. We never even would think of an ultrasound, we just go operate on people. That's what we did and say, oh, nothing's here, and that was part of what we did. Now, of the three of us, fast forward many, many years, Debbie committed suicide. She ended up going into anesthesia after that first year. She tried to quit the second month while we were together, and I told her not to, because if someone quit, it was very clear you were on call every night because there was no one else. And Barbara ended up being a plastic surgeon, but got cancer early in her 50s and has died. So part of that, when you reflect back and you get to be older like I am, is you look back and say, how come, I'm okay? How come I haven't been sick? Yesterday, I just lost another friend. Mark Friedel died yesterday, who's a vascular surgeon actually down in Kansas City, who's 65. So as you get older, these things happen, and you want to know, how are you going to have this just wonderful life? Because if I were to tell you, I've had a great academic surgery life. And you are a great department of surgery and trainees. I've never seen such skilled, hardworking people. What you do with that emergency room, which is overburdened right now, and you've got 26 add-ons and everything you did, and the police shot somebody yesterday. I know that. I monitor you. I watch you. What you do is really amazing God's work, whatever God you believe in. I mean, it's just unbelievable what you do. And 30% of what we do here is urgent emergent, and there's so many needy people, and you know that, to do it. So I just admire you every day. As an intern, though, you really need to spend time this first month figuring out who's sick and who's not sick. And that sounds so easy, doesn't it? Except that case we just talked about. That patient was sick, but it was really hard to figure it out, right, to do it good. That patient was sick. You're going to see people with mesenteric ischemia. It's really a hard diagnosis. Every single one of them gets misdiagnosed because it's the sickest patient you ever saw, and you don't want to operate on them. So you run away. I would too, but you got to operate on them. So you got to really pay attention to sick and non-sick. And the one thing, you got to call everybody you know. I mean, call your mother, your father, your brother, me. I'm always on email. I'll answer you. But you got to call somebody every time you see someone, because what if it was you? And what if you missed somebody that was sick? So the little bit I'm going to tell you about is how to get through this and to be the happiest person that you need to be. And my career has been pretty interesting because I actually have sort of been alone as I sort of forged through all this, because back in the 80s, there weren't that many women in surgery. So now diversity is even more incredible than it was then. I was the sixth person to finish the program at UCLA, and I was the only woman on faculty at both UCSD and UCLA. And when I went to Milwaukee, there were two of us. So there was Mary Otterson and myself. And when I came back to UCLA, I was the only woman division chief. And when I took over Hopkins, it also was a pretty unique opportunity in the sense that they really hadn't seen a woman do it before. And many people will tell you can't do things. And the way you're going to make sure you can is you're going to get really good. Okay, you're going to figure out sick and non-sick. You're going to learn how to use that ultrasound. You're going to be all over everything. You're going to make sure you know and understand. You're going to call everybody. You're going to be teams. You're going to make that happen so that you're the surgeon that you would want your surgeon to be. And that's what you do. That's what you do. And we fret. Surgeons fret. If I were to tell you the one thing I've learned being the dean here is there's many specialties out there. We own fretting. I mean, we own it. You could hear that in Catherine's voice talking about these cases. She does these all the time, but here, it's hard to kill a stomach. I mean, I've heard of 2 dead stomachs in my life, but it happens, and we fret. We fret because that's what we do. You wake up at night and go, oh my God, is it going to bleed? Is it going to clot? Did I do this? Did I do that? And you worry, and that's what surgeons do. And that also is what can make you sick. Okay, that's what can make you commit suicide. It can make you, like Deb, it can make you not feel well. It can make you drink. It can make you use drugs. It can make you abuse your family. It can make you do all sorts of odd things. So if you have that happening, it's not unusual, because you're going to have patients you're going to take care of that you should have made that diagnosis, right? Or you should have, and they're going to die, and they're going to not do well. And you're going to have to deal with all of that. And that's being a surgeon, and that's why we're still here. Now for yourself too, you're going to have to tell them who you are. And the one thing I really want you to do, especially if you're a little unusual looking, and I purposely wore this outfit today because who would think this is the dean, right? I got orange shoes on, okay, I got a flowered dress on. I'm going out to Davis today, so you know you get to look like Davis, okay. But who would think I'm the dean, you know? So you all know who I am. But when I walk around these hallways, you know, they don't know who I am. So you got to say I'm the dean. And so when you walk into the emergency room today, which there's a gazillion people, I'm sure you're going to see them all, and you're the new intern, and you look younger than 25, and maybe you are female, or maybe you're from Ethiopia, or wherever you are, they don't know who you are. So don't let us make mistakes. So walk in and say, you know, I'm Julie Freischlag. I'm the Dean of School of Medicine. You know, I'm Earl Smith. I'm the new intern on acute care surgery. And make it crystal clear so that people know who you are and give you responsibility. Now, the one thing I'll tell you, I've got more stories than I have fingers and toes, but at Hopkins, we had an issue with a 12-year-old on a Sunday who had been riding his bike and ran into a fence, and a wire went right across here, and he had a laryngeal injury and couldn't breathe and needed a trach, and everybody swarmed around the bed. And of course, nobody knows who anybody is. It's July, right, to do it. And they assume that the resident on call for otolaryngology has the most experience to do this case, right? Well, what happened to be an intern, and she didn't know how to do this. And instead, there was an anesthesiologist there who was out from the neonatal ICU, and he knew everything how to do this. They didn't call the trauma team. There was not anesthesia, so they said she should do it, and she didn't say, I've never done this, and they couldn't get an airway, and the kid died. And when we looked at all of this, the biggest mistake we made was not identifying who everybody was. And so as you go to that table and make that happen, you got to tell them who you are and what you can and cannot do. And that's not only in clinical medicine, but that's also in everything else you're going to do. It's going to be in your research, it's going to be in leadership, it's going to be in all the things you do. So you got to identify yourself, and you got to tell them what you can and cannot do. We're teams now. And if you've never trached a 12-year-old, that's not the time to start. You know, you need to say, has anybody done this? And if not, let's find somebody. So we changed policy, and then for every single airway, we had the trauma surgeon who's in call attending, and the neonatal ICU attending, who's usually an anesthesiologist. They all had to be there in order to do this, because a 12-year-old died. And so you need to tell us who you are, what you can do, what you can't do, and then to debrief, because we're all going to make mistakes about making that happen. Now, it is true, I've actually, this talk is published in JACS. I think it's coming out this month on resilience, and it's all about some stories I'm going to tell. And frequently, you will not get opportunities you think you deserve, okay, that you always think you're going to win. That's what we love about surgeons, don't we, is that I'm going to win. You know, I always win, I get my way. But I'll tell you, I looked at about 10 chair jobs before I got the Hopkins job. I actually was given the Denver job and taken it away. I mean, the stories are amazing. And there were some days I wish I hadn't gotten that Hopkins job, let me tell you, to make that happen. And looking at deans, I looked at about probably 8 to 10, you know, and people didn't choose me, and it really irritated me, you know, because I always thought I was the best candidate, don't we all, you know, to do it. But it is this fit thing that you're going to go along, and some of the best doors that close in your face are going to make you go off and do something amazing. So as that door closes, as a surgeon, I was really taught to beat down the door, right? Is that? But don't do that, okay? Especially not so I hear about it. But you really need to go through another door, and you don't want to go through another window because you can injure yourself, and then you'll be on Joe and Jerry's services. But you want to go through another door, and I can't tell you the number of times I've had to go through another door because it wasn't quite what I wanted, and I was pretty irritated about it. But part of it is to realize that's the way it's going to be, and not to get sad about it if your abstract doesn't get accepted, or if you don't get the fellowship you want, or whatever. It is true, you'll read in that article, that I really wanted to train at UCSF. That was my number one choice. And when I showed up at UCLA, I was very disappointed. But with my match story, which is true, they dropped the slip on the floor. This is before computers, can you believe that? They couldn't find it for about 10 minutes. So for about 10 minutes, I didn't think I matched anywhere. But I did get matched, and so I was glad to go. And for 20 years, I thought that I wasn't good enough to go to UCSF, and there were quite a few of us there. It wasn't quite the ranking system then, but everybody wanted to go to UCSF. I had done a rotation, and Wiley and Stoney were there, and it was the beginning of vascular surgery. And for 20 years, I thought that I wasn't good enough to go there. But I went to UCLA, turned out okay, right? You know, I did, my career's great. And I'm sitting there talking to Bill Krupski, who's one of our friends who also died early in a diving accident years ago. And he said, you know, I've been wanting to tell you something for 20 years. I'm like, oh boy, what's this? You know, and he goes, you know, I sat there when they put the rank list together for UCSF because I was the student on his service. He was the vascular fellow, and that's when I decided to be a vascular surgeon. And he said, you know, the chair of surgery there decided he was ranking no women that year. So all three of you got thrown in the garbage. And I looked at him and I said, whoa, what do you mean? And so for 20 years, I thought they hadn't chosen me, but they actually hadn't even given me a chance. And that wouldn't happen now. I mean, that it could, I guess, but not here and not wherever, and it doesn't happen. But I sat there and actually went through the whole Kubler-Ross thing. I mean, I was just mad that I had wasted any energy in my life being upset they didn't take me. And then pissed off that Bill hadn't told me 20 years. He had wait till the chair died, till Dr. Ebert died. Then he decided to tell me. I was like, God bless you. And then it made me realize that maybe many other things I didn't get, you know, it wasn't my fault, you know. So part of that is people are going to choose not to hang with you, and that's okay. It's their loss. But don't spend 20 years thinking you weren't good enough, you know, to do it. And so part of that, it just makes you, all of a sudden you see your life flash before you. What if I had been there? What if that happened? And it would have been different, but it turned out really well. So this is how I spent 11 years of my life at Hopkins. That's me with all the other chairs. They're really nice people, but they all look very similar. One now is the dean at Stanford, Lloyd Minor, over here, and he's an otolaryngologist. John now is the new EVP at Emory. He's a radiologist. Brooks Jackson is the dean at Minnesota here. So a lot of really great people, but as you can see, except for Gabe, who runs the ED and never wears a tux, the rest of them look the same. So we used to go out to dinner a lot, and I used to ask them, I said, if you knew of the 19 of us, that 18 were women and it was you, would you come to dinner? And they said no. So part of it is what you learn along the way. And of course, for those of you that know me, of course I'd wear a red silk jacket because that's just the way I am. And I was, the first year I was at Hopkins, everybody commented on what I wore. It was crazy, and that was even before Twitter and all this, so they would just email about so I wore black for a year. I just was like, I couldn't take it. But again, that's not my style either. And so part of it is, you know, it may look like this for you, okay, for whatever you are. And the answer is, you know, put on a red jacket. You know, just let them see you. Raise your hand. I once asked Hailey DeBoss, who was a faculty member down with me at UCLA before he became chair of surgery at UCSF and the dean. And he's also on my board right now. And he was born and raised in Emetria. And when I was looking at these chair jobs, I called Hailey and I said, do you think they're interviewing me just because I'm a woman? And I said, do you ever feel that they asked you to show up just because you were black? And he goes, well, of course. Of course that's what they did. But when you show up, make sure you have something very important to say. And then they'll invite you back because you have something very important to say. And the other thing is to be very, very good. Eddie Cornwell, who was my chair of trauma at Hopkins for a few years before he became chair of surgery and sort of interim dean at Howard, would always say, you know, excellence trumps people not treating you fairly. Excellence gets you wherever you want to go. So be as good as you can get, okay? But it doesn't mean that it won't feel or look like that wherever you've been. Now, part of this whole thing is how do you get through adversity, which is, you know, illness with your patients, disappointment with physicians, even trauma with your own families, because you are going to have many things get in your way, you know. And I wish I could tell you that my life has been perfect, that I have no regrets, and that nothing's there, but it's not true. You know, I've been divorced. I have 2 stepkids. I've been married now to Phil about 23 years, and I have 1 son who's a senior in college, and, you know, I had him when I was 40. He was in vitro. You know, I've got my whole list of how interesting it's been, but with that, it's been a challenge, but I now have a granddaughter, which many of you know. I tweet her picture frequently. I'm sure you also saw her red toes. I painted her toes when she was 18 months old. I'm very fast. I have good hands, so off we went. And my other stepson his wife's pregnant with a boy, so I'm going to have a grandson in October, and they live in LA. So you end up pretty good, but I have no regrets as you went through, because those doors that slammed were really good to slam. And those people that weren't nice to me, that didn't take me into the residency, did me a great favor, because I ended up in the right place. And I'm here. Who would have thought I'd be a dean of a medical school at UC Davis? I mean, that wasn't on my list of things to do, but here I am, you know, and lucky me, because we are an amazing institution with the best collaboration I've ever seen of a team. As you know, we're strategically planning, and if you don't know, get on the website, because it's a big deal. I know Diana's really been very supportive of this, and we've got our 6 goals, and all the chairs of all the departments came together for 3 days in February, and then we had another retreat in June, and it was sort of first come, first serve young faculty that I wanted, and of course 5 surgeons showed up because you sign up fast. You know, Joe was there, and Mike was there, and Lisa was there, and it was really great to see the young people helping us drive the strategic plan. So instead of figuring out how to bounce back, because if you look at what resilience means, I would like you to figure out how you bounce up, and all of us sort of retool and regroup in a different way. I love people, and so I'll go out, see people, do things. I love to read. I'm always reading 3 or 4 books at a time. I'm a crafter. I sew. I make things to do it. So figure out, what is that thing you do that makes you feel whole, that grounds you? How do you bounce up? My son, who's 21 now, is an introvert. Can you believe I birthed an introvert? You know, and he's 6'4". He's a football player, lacrosse player. He's in business at University of Maryland, doing very well, doing an internship this summer. Still dating his high school sweetheart, 5 years, which is interesting. And we really like her, but it's just I've never seen that. And he regroups like by himself, you know, and he would say, you know, Mom, this is me, that you. He goes up on that Xbox for an hour, and after an hour, he's sane. He's sort of like that Snickers commercial. I mean, he's in that horrible way, and then he goes and, I don't know, kills people on those things and does all, then he comes out a normal human. And so whatever it is that makes you do that, you know, figure that out, because the interns, you're going to need that this year. And it can't be a 4-day vacation, right? Okay, because you don't have that much time. So you've got to figure out, how do you reboot and bounce up in minutes and seconds? How do you get over something bad happening? So when I was president of the SVS, I presented a talk, which is online, about giving people chances and strategies. And I had a patient come up and talk that I had done his ruptured aneurysm. He was from Boston, that's where the meeting was. And when he came down to watch the Oriole game, because him and his wife loved to watch the Red Sox, but they couldn't get tickets in Boston, so they traveled the world. And he ruptured this aneurysm, and I got him in the middle of the night, and we saved him. And I followed him for about 10 years, and he spoke. It's really a great, you can find it online, where he speaks about getting in the helicopter and me looking him right in the face on the table saying, don't worry, I'll take care of you. That's all he remembers, to do that. And for 10 years, we went back and forth, and so he talked. And actually, I didn't realize I really irritated all the Boston vascular surgeons, because he stood up and said, you know, after I met Julie, there's no way I'm seeing a surgeon in Boston. And that didn't go over very well, because he always would come down to Baltimore, mainly to see the Red Sox in September, but he would come see me too. And this last 2 years, he started dilating his proximal aorta between the renals and the graft. And, you know, a lot of ruptured aneurysms don't make it through the case, and they don't live 10 years. So here we are 10 years after a ruptured aneurysm. He's getting a little senile, and this thing starts to grow. So my partner was seeing him in Baltimore, and then he started seeing Michael, one of the vascular surgeons at the Brigham. And it got pretty big. It was 6 to 7 centimeters, and you could argue it needed to be fixed, and his wife didn't want it fixed, and his mind wasn't, so we decided to wait another 6 months and look at it. And just this past October, they re-imaged it, and it's 6 centimeters, but he only has 1 kidney. So the minute they do it, he's on dialysis, tough, and now he's 82. So he decided to fix it, but that night he ruptured it. And he came into the Brigham, and they tried to save him, and 42 days later he died. And I was just so upset last fall because I like, God, I should have had him go in earlier. How did we do this? And I didn't hear from his wife. And I just fretted so much because I had talked to him and his wife, and it seemed the right thing to do, but that's not what we wanted. And so in January this year, his niece called me and said, I just wanted to thank you. And I said, thank me for what? I said, I really feel so bad about what happened to Jack. She goes, no, you gave him an extra 2 years. You told him to wait, and he had the 2 years, and he didn't really want surgery. And even the 35, 42 days, he didn't want it. And we just want to thank you for making the right decision for us. And part of that, just when I saw Michael at the vascular meeting, I thanked him for taking care of him and stuff. And he goes, you were right. He goes, nobody really wanted surgery, but here we were. He showed up, and we had to attempt to do it. So you will have these episodes, even as my age, where something happens that you feel responsible. So you need to figure out how you're going to bounce up and how you're going to rise through adversity. And that's going to make all the difference in your life. If you can figure this out, if you can stay with that self-reliance, if you can figure out who you are and who you're not, if you can call things truthfully, which I think surgeons do great. I could have done this, I should have done this, I made a mistake. Surgeons can make decisions with no information and then say, sorry, I was wrong. I can't tell you the number of people running healthcare these days that can't make any decisions because they're so scared they're going to be wrong. So I want you all to run something. I want you to run hospitals, clinics, deans, because we'll make decisions. We could be wrong, but at least we move forward, right, to do it. And so I really want you to lead. Even interns can lead. When you walk down to that emergency room and introduce yourself and behave yourself and are professional, you can lead that ED somewhere really special. As a chief resident, you're running this world over here. And if I get sick and come in that ED, I'm asking for the chief resident surgery on call because I know you can get my scan done. I know you'll get me where I want. And I do call you from time to time. But you do just a fabulous job. And you did just save someone's life. One of the vice chancellors emails me at 6 a.m. and says, I think I'm really sick. I'm like, okay. And it turned out one of you operated on him, and he had a gangrenous gallbladder. So I appreciate that a lot. So you need to figure out how to do this. And it's a lifelong thing. You're going to change, and you're different, and you've got different ways of doing it. You're going to have great role models in some of us. And in others of us, we are going to be the worst role models you ever saw. And you will learn a lot from those of us that don't do it quite so well, okay? You don't want to yell. You don't want to scream. One of my things is to be nice. It's to run a great OR orchestration, be nice to people, especially those that don't want you to succeed. I'll tell you some of my best stories at Hopkins were those that didn't want me there. I was so nice to them. I made them sit next to me at dinners. I Velcroed them to me. They had no idea what was going on. So if you are really nice to those that are not nice to you, it's an amazing experiment to do because they do change. And frankly, it's all about the patient, isn't it? It's all about the patient, the care, being a great doctor. It's not about this other stuff. It's all about that patient. It's all about relationships. And it's been a really tough couple of weeks, hasn't it, in the country? Looking at relationships, I just showed Joe on my phone an interview with Brian Williams, who's the trauma surgeon down at Parkland who lost all those police officers. He happens to be an African-American trauma surgeon. And you should find that online if you haven't watched it yet. There's just relationship issues, and you deal with it every day with trauma and things that come through. And I think one of the best things that came out over the weekend, I watched a lot of the CNN. I finally had to turn it off because it's just so sad, isn't it? Is that you do need to go home and you need to look in that mirror and you need to figure out what are you personally going to do to make your relationships with people better? And what are you personally going to do to make sure everybody feels included? as you know, our theme last year was inclusive excellence, and you need to just make sure you understand. And if you have not taken implicit attitude testing, you should. I have, to know your biases so you can figure out what it is, and it does work. They made us practice when I was at Hopkins to say, to choose whether it was Harvard or Hopkins, and they showed us the pictures, and of course we hated everything with Harvard and we loved everything with Hopkins because it does work to do it. And all the medical students now are taking it, and we do need to figure out relationships, and you need to figure out how you make this work. So how do you do it? So it's nice to talk about it, but you need tactics, you need things that you need to do. And part of it is you really need to get and stay connected. So for those of you that are new here, make sure you make some friends. You've got interns that are just like you. Choose a few you like. You don't have to like all of them. Just choose a few to like. Have your families get to know each other. I think that's very powerful in residencies, and I think you guys do it really well here from what I can see. Similar if you're in the fellowships or wherever, find somebody, get connected. Stay connected. You can do that. You're on those phones all the time, right? I mean, all of you, I'm sure 150 texts went out. I'm sure there were some tweets already. They tweeted me talking before I talked. So stay connected. I still talk to friends from high school. One's coming to the wine country in 2 weeks. College, my brother's showing up today. Make sure you're connected to your kids and your family. And it doesn't have to be long periods of time. It can be dinner. It can be a picnic. It can be watching something on TV. I told one of the medical students who has 3 children, what can you do with your kids? Well, Sacramento is so beautiful at night. You can see the moon and the stars. There's hardly any city you can do that. And I told her, just walk out on your front step with your children and look at the moon and the stars. It's just gorgeous, and make up stories. You can talk about who lives up there and what. It's just beautiful in this city. We need to appreciate that. So stay connected and make that happen, especially when you're sad, or you need to tell a story like Jack, who ruptured his proximal aorta. Find somebody to tell. So I told Misty and I told Nazim, and they both told me it was okay, that that was the right thing to do. But tell somebody, because the minute you tell, the minute you call, the minute you let people know that you don't know the answer, you can't do it, then all of a sudden there's relief that you stay connected. And it's really important. You need to find a mentor, and there's tons in this department, there's tons across there, and you can find a mentor, and then you need to mentor. If you're a chief resident, you choose a couple of those interns and you help them through, especially the one that's having trouble, that drives you crazy. That's the one you need to spend time with, is because the other ones that are excellent, it's easy to be their mentor. They're going to go on and do everything, right, to do it. But spend time with each other to mentor and mentee. The first year I was here, our theme was mentorship, and it's key. The reason I'm where I'm at is people mentored me through all of this. I mean, I've had more people give me help than have hurt me. And part of it is you do have to learn how to be a mentee and make that happen. I mentor many of this people in this room to do it. And if you need somebody to talk to you, just send me an email, I'll talk to you. It's almost that simple. But you need to have those mentors there. Again, 5-minute, 10-minute conversations is all it needs to be. And this is the most important one. If I were to tell you, over my 30 years now of being in academic surgery, being a good colleague is the most important thing you can be. Now, what does that mean? It means you do what you say you're going to do. You're going to go check that scan, you check that scan. If you're going to write that book chapter, you write that book chapter. If you're going to give me a call, you give me a call. If you do an operation, you do it just like it was your mother or father, assuming you love your mother and father, okay? So you're gonna be that colleague. You're gonna treat people in that OR the way you want people to treat you. And I cannot tell you over the years how I've been so disappointed in some of the most famous people we know and how they've behaved and what they've said and done. Some aimed at me, some at others. I think we're much better with that. I think it is the stress, it's the fretting, it's all this stuff. We assume that, if I'm not in a hospital, somebody will die, or I have to be the best, and if I leave the hospital, it will fall over. I mean, there's all that going on there. But be a good colleague, which means you listen, you do what you say you're going to do, you're nice to people, you understand. I think we heard a lot over the weekend, put yourself in those other people's shoes. What if you were a brand new intern? I remember vividly being with Debbie, being a brand new intern. One time we did a sympathectomy, which you'll never do, and you probably don't even know what it's for, but we did a sympathectomy on a lady because bypasses didn't work. She stayed in the hospital 4 days, went back down to Long Beach, and I forgot to take out her staples. I thought I was going to get fired, so I drove on my day off down to Long Beach and took out her staples and came back up so that Dr. Moore wouldn't fire me. Well, how stupid. You could have just asked her to come to clinic. But back then, I was like, phew, I got that done. And of course, then Dr. Moore said, I heard you drove to Long Beach. But be a good colleague. And sometimes it takes a lot of energy to be a good colleague because the person you're talking to isn't being a good colleague. And then call that out. I think that's one of my best qualities and also one of my worst is that if you do something really stupid, rude, or bad, I won't call you out right here, but I will find you. And I will find you personally and say, what you said and did, you may have thought had a huge impact, but no one's going to talk to you ever again. And you're not going to be invited back to that meeting because you're unreasonable. And what you said is rude, and I'll tell you that because you won't be invited back. And so make sure if you do see a colleague that isn't being a good colleague, sit down and be a mentor to them and tell them how to do that because it's really important. I need surgery to be the example of everything here so that you do amazing things, and you are. I can't tell you how you are. You're just fabulous. But I think we have moments where we can have some opportunity. So the last thing I'm going to talk about is about burnout. If you want to read about this, I've written extensively. We are going to send out a new survey from the college to relook at this because we sent one out 10 years ago. Charles Balt sort of had me do this because they noted that young surgical oncologists had a high incidence of depression and burnout, especially women. And so when you look at this is the burnout rates, and the most recent one, this is the Mayo Clinic, and I work with Lizzie Ott there, who does all the burnout surveys through Mayo Clinic. And as you see, we really don't make the top 10, even though we think we should. But as you can see, emergency medicine is really high, so be nice to the ED doctors down there, which I know you are. But if you look at this, a lot of it has to do with patient contact. Radiologists don't really meet anybody unless they're interventionalists. So they sit there in a dark room looking at films. Oh my God, to do it. And so, not sure how dermatology is there, but maybe they're only skin deep, to do it. But my husband just had Mohs surgery though, and it took 4 hours to do this thing, but it's beautiful now to do it. So maybe it also is that stress. And then look, anesthesia's in the top 10. Now maybe we have better coping skills. Maybe we know how to do this. Maybe we know who we are and who we're not. Maybe we can go run 2 miles and come back and feel like we had a vacation. Maybe that's our thing to do it, but those are the top 10. And who is burnt out? It will be the best doctor you know. It won't be the worst doctor you know. When they've done these studies, it's usually that best doctor you know who gets exhausted, starts talking about patients depersonalizing them, starts degrading themselves about what they've accomplished, treating people like objects, feeling very emotionally depleted, physically exhausted. You start seeing a little poor judgment. We have studies showing that they make medical and surgical errors. Cynical. Now maybe we're all a little cynical. You have to look at it on a grade of cynicism to do it. Feeling guilty, and then feeling that you're ineffective, that you're lost. So if you see that happening to one of your colleagues, you want to sit down and talk to them. One of the best things we're doing now with mental health issues in students, because there's a high incidence in undergrad students and medical students, is teaching non-medical people to recognize some of the signs and symptoms. And frequently, it just needs a discussion where you recognize that something's wrong. Just like my husband says, you don't have to solve it for me. I just need to tell you the problem. Don't fix it for me. You just need to listen. And sometimes just listening can be very important. So if you see that and talk to your colleague, then if it doesn't go where it wants to go, you need to talk to Joe or Diana or Jerry. But frequently it will be that. And a lot of times it's just time off, it's sleep. Sleep deprivation back when we were every other night was the reason we threw things and did crazy things. When I think back to it, just crazy, crazy, crazy things because we didn't get enough sleep. And they say you need 7.5 hours of sleep. And I just started doing that now in my 60s, and I do need 7.5. You don't have that opportunity. But whenever you can get that, they say you need to clean your brain. About 6 hours, your brain is still got toxins in it in between 6 and 7.5. You do it, and then when you wake up in the morning, if you can give yourself 3 to 5 minutes to just thank the world for something. Thank the world for your job, maybe your family. Think of a few things to be thankful for. They say your day will be 5,000% better. And so I do that now. A young woman, chair of surgery at Texas Tech, Sharmila, taught me that sort of 5-minute, she calls it meditation. I just think it's thinking, but I'm working on the meditation part. But I'm meditating for 5 minutes. But I think part of that is to learn how to be thankful. And again, I really want you to hear from me how thankful I am for such a fabulous Department of Surgery in all its parts. You're just amazing. And what you do to teach the students and to take care of patients is amazing. So you need to really pat yourself on the back every single day for that. But as you go forward, this is a challenge. You fret, it's tough, it's hard. I'm still worried about Jack. You could hear it in my voice. I still wonder, should we have done him earlier or not, because I love Jack. So you're going to have a lot of Jacks in your world, and you're going to take very good care of them. So this is one of my favorite quotes, and it's in the articles. You don't measure a man's or woman's, this is George Patton, of course he wouldn't say woman's success, by how high he climbs, or he, she, but how high he, she bounces. When he hits, he, she at the bottom, okay? So that's what we're going to gauge you. All of you are going to run in something really big and ugly, okay? And it's really how you respond and how you make that happen. That's going to make all the difference in the world. And you can do it. It's just a day-by-day, piece-by-piece thing to make it happen. And there's lots to read about it. There's lots we'll listen to. We'll make sure you're okay as you go through this program. And we really are just so proud of all the surgeons, all the residents, the students that are sitting here. You're all going to make an incredible difference, and it's my pleasure, really, to be the dean and also to come. Our theme this year is health and wellness, so we're going to do lots of activities this year. We're going to learn how to do a little yoga if you don't know how to do it, and we're going to drink some green tea, and we're going to really do this 5-minute thinking meditation thing. We're really going to work on figuring out how we can be the healthiest and well workforce, as well as that will affect our patients. So thanks so much, and I'll take any questions.
Time for questions?
I have time for questions.
Please. Nobody burnt out in the audience.
Oh, Dr. Pevick, you've got to have a question for me. No question.
Why don't you begin with a little bit more expansion on the strategic plan for the whole university to give them some perspective of where the next 10, 20 years are going to lead Davis.
Okay, great. So I do appreciate everybody that's been part of it. So you'll find this on the Insider in case you want. And there will be a webinar in September if you feel you want to give me more information. But we have 6 goals that we're doing. We're coming together, and you've done a lot of work in the Department of Surgery with the last retreat, and I know Diana will spread it out to all of you to look at that. The number one is really to be improving population health. That's one of our big goals and pillars, and Fred Myers is working very hard to put together a precision health program, which includes a lot of the things that we do with outcomes research for surgery. So you'll see that as one of our big goals and one of our pillars to do that. One is reimagining education. We're looking at that not only in the medical school, but with how we teach and train surgeons. We are going to get a better simulation center. I'm still working on that, but that will happen. It will not be in the hospital. You cannot put teaching things in hospitals anymore. It will be over here somewhere to do it, but we are working with some companies to reimagine that so that you have better access to simulation. We're looking at innovative research and accelerating that. One of the things that came up with our core values as we asked everybody to reevaluate them, along with patient-centered care and compassion, was innovation. And so innovation's number 3 for us. So looking at ways to take some of the newest things we do from bench to bedside, looking at stem cells, utilizing them earlier in orthopedic injuries. We have lots of them that we're going to put together under those bullets to make that happen. And then one of them also is looking at patient-centered care that we want to really improve. We're calling it person-centered care, because a lot of people you're going to take care of really aren't your patients. They're going to be in their homes. Our telemedicine program is really exciting. I think we have a lot of opportunity in surgery to do most of our post-op visits in telehealth instead of having them come to clinic. I think we could, especially if they live in Reading and far away, that we could set up, and Misty I know is doing a program looking at that for some of our amputee patients because they can't come to clinic, or this patient that couldn't come to clinic with the ileostomy, couldn't have a ride. Wouldn't have been nice that we could have seen that. Maybe we wouldn't have made that diagnosis, but we could have seen the malaise of that patient over telehealth. So we're looking at that as well too. One of them is to change our culture. So even though we're the most collaborative place I've ever been, transforming our culture so that we're more of what I call loud and proud. So there's a hashtag out there called Loud and Proud. For those of you who are young, you are pretty loud and proud, but we're a little humble. We're a little wondering. And when we talk to external people about UC Davis, they told us that we need to not want to be somebody else, that we should not wonder how to be like Stanford or UCSF. Who would want to be like them? Okay, so we want to be UC Davis. What do we do that's amazing? Well, we do a whole lot of kidney transplants, more than anybody in the country besides 3. Are you number 1 this year, Dr. Perez? I spent 11 years trying to compete with Maryland at 10 and 11, and here we are, and no one knows that, the amazing things he does. All the trauma care we do. One of the big ideas that went to the chancellor is the trauma hospital by Joe Galante, getting money and raising money for a whole hospital that's just trauma care, efficient, full of ultrasounds in every room, to do it. And he came through. Diana put in 2 also on the center, looking at new techniques and bringing them forth, as well as fetal surgery along with Shin. So really changing our cultures so we're out there loud and proud. Tina Palmieri actually attended the second retreat as well too, and what we do at Shrine and the burn unit is just incredible, and we need to be out there more telling people what we do. Now, it doesn't mean we lose our collaborativeness and our niceness and our goodness. You can be loud and proud and still be nice. They're not 2 things that contradict each other. That's why you see me carry gear everywhere. You saw I don't have my one bag here with me, but I always carry a bag on the airplane that says UC Davis. We're going to probably change us to UC Davis Health this year because we're getting affiliations with 3 other hospitals in Northern California as I speak. And so part of that is I want you to wear the hats, and we're going to get new ties and scarves and bags, and gear works, and the rankings for hospitals are going to be coming out, I think, any moment now. And we were ranked for the first time in the top 50 2 years ago. We were ranked top 15 orthopedic programs in the country. And so those rankings, we're the number 6 hospital in the state of California. I really want to beat San Diego this year, okay? So I like to win, okay? And it's not that you're better whether you win or not, but you get more grants and you get more notoriety. You get Joe Biden coming here instead of UCSF for cancer care. And so it's those kind of things that makes us amazing, because look at who we serve and the population we serve. We want everybody to have access to UC Davis physician, and we believe that's all of Northern California, throughout the state and beyond. And as you know, with my practice, they travel from New York. They will come here because they know that's better care. And the last one, of course, is promoting sustainability, and that's just not water and grass and all that, but it's trying, how do you finance all of this? We can't do everything. We need a new tower. We are putting that together to start planning. It takes years to do a new tower, but we need a new patient tower. We're looking at about 350 beds. You see the new Betty Irene School of Nursing building going up. We're looking at doing a community center over in Governor's Hall. We're have half the funding for a new eye center, eye institute, and we're not quite sure where we're going to put that because there's a new rule now that you can only be 250 yards from the main hospital or something to bill Medicare, so we have to rethink that. And then we're also looking at ways to amplify our pediatric and pediatric surgery imprint as well too. So building will be occurring. We're going to have to prioritize, and we'll be very clear about that, because I think part of it is you have to be transparent about what you're doing and what you're not doing, what we can afford, what we can't afford, and then what everybody can do. We are ranked 31 in NIH funding. We went up to 30 this year. That's a big jump for that. So we actually have incredible research going on. as well as we're really looking at industry and companies to work with us as well. And I'm trying to get a company to build a child care center. They've only been trying to do that for 25 years here. And if I build one, I will be a queen and I can retire. But we don't do child care. That's not what we do. I need someone else to build it and run it for us. And so I'm working with some companies and people in the city to do that for us and hopefully put it right next to campus on Stockton so we can see it. But it's not something we do, and so we need to get someone else to do it. I used one at Milwaukee. It was just great, but you need to have experts doing that, and I certainly don't need to run a child care center. Sometimes I think I run a child care center, depending on the day, who's in my office, but part of it is that we'll get someone to do it. So we're working on that to make it happen. We did open a new faculty space, and if you have not been there, it's just for faculty, sorry for residents and students, but it's over by the coffee shop around the corner. You use your badge, you can go in there. It's on my 3 things on the 3rd Thursday. And faculty can go in there with residents and students and sit. It's a very nice space. And that space will follow us over to the North Addition, which will be getting built actually in the next year right behind there. So there is a faculty space. Of course, what's great, we opened it and the next day nobody's ID worked. And so thank God Diana sent me an email saying no one can get in, So it turned out we had to load everybody's name one by one, which I don't understand, but we did. So if your badge does not work as a faculty member, let me know. But it is a faculty space. But you can go in with the faculty member if you're a resident or a student, but it's really for faculty. There's a few computers there as well. So we're real excited about the strategic plan. Part of it is just putting our priorities together, and you'll see that in October. If you have any input, we've had websites where you can write. We'll have a webinar. We've had listening sessions. You can tell your division chief, your department chair. We've had medical students at both of the strategic plans. We've had nursing there, nursing students, informatics students, basic scientists, hospital people. We have a new chief operating officer who came from Kansas City that's working with us to hopefully work with the OR to make it more organized. I wish I could tell you I met an OR that works really well. They all have issues. It's that patient. That patient is unpredictable, and so are we, to do it. So Brad is just great. He ran 11 hospitals in Kansas City, and one was St. Luke's, which was a great big hospital and trauma center. So he's great. And so I think we'll be able to maximize what we do here. And the only other thing we need to think about, which Dave Wisner is helping us with, is we can't do everything we do in that hospital. It's only so big, and today it's really full. And not everyone should be in that hospital. And in fact, a lot of our patients who we operate on shouldn't be over that at all, including my ribs. They really should be in same-day surgery and outpatient arena. We need to figure out where the patient needs to be and not where we want it to be. I must admit I loved the world when it was all about Julie. When can Julie be in the OR? When can Julie be in clinic? When can Julie do this? But it's not about Julie anymore. It's about the patient. The patient, some of those patients shouldn't be in that hospital. They're sick, ugly people over there. And so they should be getting their hernia somewhere where they drive through or their angioplasty. So we are looking at some other sites in town, also in Roseville where patients don't want to come to Sacramento. Can you believe that? But they'll do a Roseville. So we need to get some flexibility in what we do that says, yes, 2 days a week I can go to Roseville and do simple cases, not complicated things because you need to follow them, but you can do your simple things and make it happen. And I'm going to do it too. I'll take my ribs anywhere. I just have to take that big retractor and off we go to do it. But we're going to have to think about that because we can't be campus-centric here. Similar to where I worked before. Hopkins, I ended up running 5 different hospitals throughout DC, one in Florida. We weren't doing everything at the same hospital either because nobody wanted to come downtown Baltimore unless you were really sick. And that's what so we need to open our minds to think about doing some of our procedures and the way we do things a little bit differently. And some of you already do travel out there, but telehealth clinic visits, outpatient surgery, making sure that we do where the patient should be, having facilities where they drive through, get it done, and go home. I think that's why we need to teach you young people because they say, 60 to 80% of what you do will not come in the hospital. And so we need to get more facile at that. And that's a culture change for us, because we all like driving here or riding our bikes here and just hanging out here. But we're going to have to get on the road and be where the patients are, not only for surgery, but primary care and all that, because we need to go to the patient versus the patient coming to us. And so just think about always, what does the patient need versus, what do you want? And sometimes that's a little difficult. I appreciate that opportunity. Any input's good. We'll finish this up by October. And then part of this, if you can help us with the health and wellness theme this year, I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.